Thanks for joining me again. Tonight I'm going to be working on taking care of some vacuum leaks that I've got in the intake on the Supercharger. It might require me to take the Supercharger off. I'm also trying to figure out why I'm not getting any boost. I talked with a guy who did pretty much the exact same thing on the same engine, and he also had the same problem I was having. He went down to a smaller pulley, but he was using a stock setup with a shorter snout on a slightly different M90 Supercharger. I've got that 1-inch one that sets the grooves back just a little bit so it can be in line and allows the Supercharger to move forward. Since I can only buy from this company down to a 3.4, what I need is probably a 3 or a 2.8 in order to start getting any usable boost. I might have to have somebody machine one for me, and we'll just use this as a template. But that's what I'm going to be working on. I'm just going to try a couple things, work on those vacuum leaks. I do need to get a new throttle bracket so my cruise control works. And then that should be it. So the intake here on the Supercharger, I've got this upside down by the way, is one of the areas where I was having a bit of a leak. So I just had this plastic throttle plate adapter that came with the metal one, and I thought that would seal it up enough. But that is not, so I'm going to use a thin layer of RTV to try and seal that off this time. And then eventually I'll probably get some gasket material and build a gasket for this and eliminate that. I may eliminate that adapter plate altogether since it isn't sealing and just do RTV to here. Next up is this. I have no gasket in here. This is leaking pretty badly. Even when this is tightened down against the throttle body, it's leaking around here. So I'm going to replace all this RTV and actually JB weld these in. Because I don't have a welder, this is brass. It should hold just fine. There's not a lot of stress. It's actually sealed on the plate itself, and I have a gasket for in here. But to harden these up a little bit and seal it up better, I'm going to go that route. Well, I'm at a stopping point for tonight. One of my bolts stripped out on my Supercharger to plenum, so I'm gonna have to get a new one before I can button things up. Otherwise, it's just a matter of getting things back together, and then hopefully all my vacuum leaks are fixed, and that'll bring the idle down. That's just step one. The bracket that I made, it was too flimsy. It needs to be out of something a little bit more substantial, so I'm gonna try and find some thicker steel to make a new one out of. The design's pretty good. I just got to get it strong enough. Well, here's an important lesson I learned. Make sure you remove anything that you put on top of your engine before you try and start it. See this? It's not supposed to be in there. I better pull it out. I'm a little nervous. Yes, I did try running the engine. I was in a hurry getting it put together the night before. I got up the next morning to start it, and it was running like crap. And I thought, what in the world could I have done? I was riding around on the Ural. I was on my way home from lunch at a stoplight, and it clicked. You never took that shirt out. It was a good reason it was in there. I was trying to keep anything from falling down into the intake manifold, but apparently you have to remove that stuff before you start your engine. So I went ahead and got that out, and I went ahead and roughed it up a little bit. I think it was just a little too smooth, and I want to make sure that the gasket was sealing well. So I just roughed it up a little bit with the sanding wheel and then some sandpaper just to give it a little more bite on that surface. And one final check to make sure no rags or anything else got left in the plenum. Looks clear to me. What do you think, boys? Should we be done for the night? Well, Walter and Stanley think it's time to end the night, and so do I. Just about finished up. I've got to finish making a new adapter plate for the idle air controller tomorrow, but then we should be able to start this up. Well, good morning. I'm going to be finishing up creating a new plate. I've mentioned this idle air controller, which is pretty important because it doesn't like to idle right without this. So I've tried a number of ways. I started with a thin plate that I just drilled some holes through, but it was so thin I couldn't tap it. So I just figured I'd try and seal it off with some RTV. And initially I did that, then I peeled it off, and I used JB Weld to try and make this stronger. And it did make it stronger for the two brass ports that I have here, but it didn't stick to this plate at all. It just lifted right off. So then I tried driving it, and I needed to seal it up, and that's why there's more RTV, and it's just a mess now. So what I'm going to use is the gasket material, and I'm just going to cut out a new plate with the thicker steel that I used for the throttle bracket. And then I should be able to at least get a couple threads in. It doesn't need a lot to hold this in. It's just got to fit, as you can see, right in there. These are too big to thread. And so I'm going to do that, and then I should be able to put this together. We'll see if it runs and how it's running. There it is. I've got it threaded, I've got it taped up, and I've got the ports in, so I'm going to go ahead and get that put on the sensor. Well, it is running. We'll probably take it out for a test drive here. We are. It's driving well. It's actually driving better than the first time around, which means I probably got rid of all those vacuum leaks. I'm going to test the cruise now and we'll see what happens. Okay. Says it's on. And here comes a hill. So we'll find out. My foot's off the throttle. Looks like I'm almost out of gas. Still going up just fine. Well, for me that's successful. That means my throttle bracket is working. I probably just have a couple little tweaks I need to do on some of the actual brackets. But for now, it looks like we've got a win.